we're just gonna go over a little bit of fetal circulation. So on this model, here's placenta. Right, placenta is the sac here where the mother is gonna facilitate gas exchange. So we don't have to go through our pulmonary circuit entirely in our heart, which is what we said before. That's why we have structures like the ductus arteriosus and the foramen ovale. So one more thing to note about the placenta and about fetal circulation, whenever we have red vessels, we're looking at veins. Why? Because they're draining blood into the fetal heart. So the point of focus is the fetal heart, meaning anything that's going into the fetal heart is a vein. Anything that's leaving the fetal heart is an artery. So this is one of the other cases where we're going to have those switch in the colors, red veins and blue arteries. Does that make sense?
But doesn't the fetal circulation? Okay.
So here's our umbilical cord. In the umbilical cord, we have the umbilical vein and umbilical artery, right? Those start from the placenta. We can see those umbilical veins and arteries coming from here. Now, the umbilical cord will come into the body through this, and the vessel we're looking at is this red structure, red vessel right here. This is the umbilical vein. Vein because it's draining into the fetal heart. It's bringing oxygenated blood to the heart. That makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Umbilical vein. If you look inside, I'm facing this way. The umbilical vein comes up and it splits into two vessels, one that goes up, and the arrows are literally there, one that goes up and one that goes down. The one that goes up will be the ductus venosus. And the one that goes down will go into what becomes the hepatic portal. In this case, hepatic portal, not hepatic portal vein, because it's just the pooling of blood. Some of the blood, that's why it's purple, because some of the blood is oxygenated, some of it's deoxygenated. It's moving blood around.
Nice.
Exactly. Does that make sense? In here, you really don't have to know anything. So don't worry about that. Right. Now, the ductus venosus is the vessel that goes up, and that will lead into the heart. Questions so far? Technically, the ductus venosus leads into the inferior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava leads into the heart, and we know our circulation that way, right? So, general circulation through the heart would go right atrium, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, open the coronary sinus into right atrium, which goes to the right ventricle, which goes to the pulmonary circuit, which comes back to the left atrium, then left ventricle, then out through systemic circuit, right? Everyone knows that. For the fetal heart, we have two additional pathways. We'll think about it like this. Can I get a heart model? Someone, please? And we'll do it when he gets back. Anyone, doesn't really matter. Thank you. So when we talk about fetal circulation, thank you, the end point, I got you, is going to be the aortic arch. Why? Because from the aortic arch, we can go to the upper body, lower body. I guess coronary circulation doesn't matter. Upper or lower body, right? So we always want to end up in the aortic arch. So the first way blood can pass, blood enters the right atrium. Blood goes through the foramen ovale. Foramen ovale leads from the right atrium to the left atrium, left ventricle, up, ascending aorta, aortic arch. We're done. That's where we want to end up, in the aortic arch, right? There's the first pathway. So foramen ovale goes from right to left atria, left ventricle, aorta. Good? Second pathway, right atrium. Instead of going through the foramen ovale, blood goes through our conventional pathway. It goes to the right ventricle to pulmonary trunk through ductus arteriosus, which goes into the aortic arch. We're done. Does that make sense? So those are our two additional pathways. Foramen ovale goes from right to left to left ventricle to aortic arch. Secondary, right atrium, right ventricle, pulmonary trunk, ductus arteriosus. Does that make sense? Those structures we cannot fully see on the fetal model. Here's the right atrium, here's the right ventricle, here's the pulmonary semilunar valve, here's the left atrium and left ventricle. Okay, actually it does go in. Aha. Okay. There we go. There is your foramen ovale. See how the stick goes in? That's the hole that goes from the right atrium to the left atrium. Foramen ovale. Everyone sees it? Yeah. The ductus arteriosus, you can really only see on the heart model, the fully grown heart. On this one, it's just the space right here where the pulmonary trunk is connected to the aortic arch, right there. Does that make sense?
That's what it's called.
Ductus arteriosus. Questions with that? Just know there's 2 additional pathways. That's really it for this model. I'm not going to ask you much.